Yeah. The moment you said, I was thinking, to be fair, I was thinking Spanish Civil War, but I didn't know that you were familiar with it. So I went with the October Revolution. That is amazing. And not many people understand. Like, it baffles me. Like, especially in the UK. I don't know how the US works, but the UK, when students go and study history, is British history. You know, the British Empire, the Commonwealth, and that's it. It happens to be a big chunk of the world, but there are more countries. So
Right.
people don't know that just not 40 years ago, we had a fascist dictatorship in Spain. And it was the last fascist government in Europe. Like, Franco died in 1974. That's like really, really serious, like recent in like the big scope of things.
It's
So yeah,
really
that
bizarre. It's so weird when you think about how it was just like, oh yeah, there's like, we got this fascist here, but you know, it's whatever.
yeah. And I'm gonna allow this tangent because it's interesting. But I think it's really interesting how I think the reason why he survived, like his regime survived, is because he was very clever at morphing into whatever the situation needed. Like when there was the Second World War, then he said, well, who's winning at this time? Hitler kind of is. I'm going to be a bit fascist. And he survived the Civil War just like that.
Yeah.
And then when the war ended and the Allies won, he said, well, I'm just gonna wait in the background and see what happens. Things kind of resolved or semi-resolved, and then the whole Western capitalism versus communism happened, and he said, "Oh, let's kill these red pigs. Yes, communism down." And that's the way that he just wanted power. Anyway, big tangent. Let's go back.
No, that's great. And I'm sure you know a lot more about Franco than I do. I'm amazed at. I think I don't know if this is true, but it seems like he was less of an ideologue than like Hitler or Mussolini, where he was,
100%.
like you said, way more practical. Like, let's focus on staying in power. And I think,
yeah, he was power hungry, and he would do whatever it took to stay in power. That's how we still have up to 600,000 unidentified people that were killed in roads and buried in the middle of nowhere. And it gives me like literal goosebumps, and it really saddens me because I don't know if you were familiar with the history of Spain before the dictatorship, but we were a republic, and we had abolished the monarchy, and we were very liberal, and we were very leftist, and it just for you to like understand the level that we were at. Both Einstein and Marie Curie went to Madrid and said that they thought Spain would be the next, like Madrid would be the next capital of enlightenment. And then the army said, no. So it really,
right.
it's shocking. And I mean,
I
was gonna.
Oh, sorry. No, I was just gonna
go
say,
ahead.
like, that's what it seemed like also in Germany too, with you know, like there was a strong leftist movement in Germany, and that's like in my book, there is like a government that's, you know, really stupid. Nobody likes it. And there are, you know, people who are on the far right, people on the far left. They both hate it. And it's kind of like, it seems like in these moments of crisis, it's always these, you know, the left and the right coming and butting heads, and one side will prevail at some point, I guess.
Yeah. So yeah, we're talking about poetry and kind of linking it. I don't know, but I've got a point here. There is this poet. I don't know if you're familiar with him. It's Lorca.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Right.
I
wow,
love Lorca.
you are gaining points. You are top of the list right now. You've done your homework. He was gay, and he was homosexual in 1936. And not only that, but he was part of this movement in Spain, a very liberal thinking, very independent group of poets and thinkers. And one day, there's this like militarized branch of the police called the Guardia Civil, the people with green wearing weird hats. And one day they went to his house, took him to his porch and killed him, shot him, and buried him in the middle of nowhere. And so yeah, this kind of thing, like you think about the potential that they could have reached, and they were robbed of their talents, of their life, of everything, and now you don't even know where they are. Like you can't even like.
Oh,
anyway, it's quite personal, as you can see.
Did you go to school in Spain? Did you?
Yeah. I was born in the Canary Islands, which is, I don't know if you know where they are. They're like off the coast of Africa.
Okay.
They were colonized in like the 14th century, so basically part of Spain. We lived. The thing is, since it's so recent, my parents were alive, obviously, but my parents were like children when and teenagers and adults when Franco was still in power.
Right.
And the stories that you hear, things like the things that really you can learn about the big scope of things. But one thing I really like, I'm rambling a lot, but one thing that I really liked about talking to my granny before she passed is that it was living history. Like she was there. She would tell me about like the Zeppelins that Franco borrowed from Hitler, and like the war and everything, and the civil war and the aftermath, and the stories of like my village. I'm from a really tiny village, and when you take this kind of things to a small scope, and you can imagine the finger pointing, here's a communist, take him, here's a blah blah blah, and really truly heartwarming stories. For example, the priest of the town, he would hide people at his own peril and his own like risk. He would just hide communists in the basement of the church, and the Guardia Civil will come and will bang in the doors, will shoot, will shout, will threaten to bomb the church. And he would pragmatically use the religion that they preached, that these fascists, because they were ultra religious as well, and that's how he saved many of the communists. But yeah, there's atrocities. There is this place in my island. It's like a geological formation. It's like a tube-like, because it's volcanic islands. So there's this tube-like formation where you can throw things in, but there's absolutely no way to recuperate things. So they just throw people in alive.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So there's hundreds of remains down there, and there is no way of getting them back. So yeah, and this happened. This is not, I don't know, a tribe in Africa. This is not Southeast Asia. This is Europe not long ago, and people just turn a blind eye.
It's so shocking. It's amazing, and it's amazing that you're able to talk to your grandmother and have that historical connection. And I'm curious, how do they teach it? Like the Spanish Civil War in Spain now.
There is, like in everywhere in the world, this new populist wave, and they're trying to mask and hide all of these atrocities. So it really depends. It really depends on who taught it, because the books hide it, and the teachers sometimes are delusional and they just like don't talk about it. I'm lucky that we as Canarians, we were sheltered away from the mainland when like the real war happened. So we have sort of like a different perspective. But there's places like schools in Madrid where they still revere him, and there's still people that go on the streets and raise the flags of the fascist eagle, and they do the Nazi salutes, and they're just fine. And it really triggers me. How is this still allowed?
It's amazing. I mean, it's truly, I feel like it must, like in the US, like how you kind of talk about like it's different where you are, how it will be taught. In the US, we talk about the US Civil War. Yeah. It depends where you grew up. I grew up in Arizona, which is a very conservative state, and it's very, brushed over. Like the crimes of the South are very just
glorified, I suppose. Yeah,
glorified too. Yeah, and depending on where you grew up, like in the South, it's just the Civil War, it's like slavery wasn't even an issue, you know. So it's amazing. It's just the past is never gone. It's always part of us, and it's always playing into what we live through.
I'm often reticent to share my thoughts on in particular American slavery, because people might think, well, you're not even American, what are you doing, shut up. But I've got a perspective. Like, the British Empire did horrible things, but the Spanish Empire did just the same kind of things. The Spanish Empire enslaved my people that lived in the islands 500 years ago. They enslaved half or 3/4 of the American continent, and the Philippines and Asia. Like, there is, like, no matter where you are from, you will be familiar with these atrocities that are synonym of human history. And to ignore them is really a disservice to all of these people that have suffered these atrocities. So you need to look at them, and you should be uncomfortable. It should be uncomfortable to look at, but you should acknowledge them, and you should hopefully move forward and build, like, use that knowledge to never repeat it again.
Absolutely. And you're bound to repeat it if you don't learn from it. And I think, you know, it's necessary, just like you said, you know, like you said, sometimes you don't want to talk about American, you know, slavery and the history of it, but, you know, it's important to criticize all other nations and call out, you know, that all of it. And this is very interesting. We've
now this is the tangent I was expecting. I don't even know if I keep it in the video, but I forgot I was recording. I was like having a blast.
Well, I had no idea that you know, where you grew up and all of this. I'm so glad we talked about this, because I find all of this super interesting. So thank you for talking about it.
No, absolutely. Again, you blew me away when you knew about the Spanish Civil War. Not that I was thinking that you're some ignorant, but it's not something that people normally know, you know. Definitely not someone without the, you know, with political history inclinations like you. So I'm having a really nice. I haven't been able to talk to anyone like this in the UK because no one knows it.